Welcome, everyone. I'm Angelo Robles to the Angelo Robles Podcast, where I look to distill the best practices and best ideas of the world's most successful investors, families, and their family offices. I hope to provide thought-provoking opinions and feature amazing thought leaders to our listeners of the podcast with an eye towards the future of investing, successful families, and their family offices. Today's podcast, I'm beyond excited about. It's titled VC Legend Tim Draper on Bitcoin. And I probably should add on cryptocurrencies in general. Obviously, by that title, you know who the special guest is. It is the VC legend himself. We're very excited, Tim Draper. To give you a little bit of context about Tim, he is one of the founders or co-founders of Draper Fisher Jurvetson, Draper University, Draper Venture Network, Draper Associates, and Draper Gorin and Home. It's really a tremendous pleasure. I wish we had more time to discuss the world of VC, Silicon Valley, Asia, China. Perhaps we'll have Tim on in the future to discuss that. And his investment track record going back to the 80s is really, truly stellar. It only includes companies like this: Tesla, SpaceX, SolarCity, Hotmail, Skype, Twitter, Twitch, Baidu, Ancestry.com, and many, many others. Tim, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Terrific. Well, thanks for having me, Angelo. This is going to be fun.
It is going to be fun. So I saw you in person where I did a brief interview with you about a year and a half ago in San Francisco, and that was a lot of fun. At that point, my knowledge about Bitcoin and crypto was just enough to be dangerous. And about a year prior, I experimented with buying and becoming more familiar with cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin. In the last couple of months, maybe because I'm home so much, I'm not on a plane 19 times a year, and I'm very active in wealth preservation and looking at monetary policy, looking at fiat currency. I mean, all these things that we're seeing that are concerning to me made me turn my attention. I've been relatively big on gold for years, and I still am, but I wanted to be more open-minded about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, which is not easy for an older guy like me. But I've tried, and I would say I'm 99% on board. I'm not without some concerns. But tell me why someone like you, an iconic venture capitalist, why years ago, back in 2014, that you were very strategic. You were the one, I believe, that purchased 30,000 Bitcoins from the Silk Road auction by the U.S. Marshals back then, and you haven't stopped being an advocate and an investor. Why?
Well, it's just a better currency, and it's just a matter of time before the rest of the world gets on board. It's an exciting time because it does a couple of things. One is it's global. That means that you can send it anywhere. You don't have to pay Western Union 16% when in sending money to another country. You can, if you're stuck in Syria and the government of Syria pushes you out, and you have a lot of Syrian money and you end up in Europe, nobody in Europe wants to take your Syrian money. But if you had Bitcoin, you could just start your life over again, buy a house and get going. And so it's global. It's decentralized, so it's not tied to any government. And this is much more familiar territory for somebody who's in Argentina or Nigeria, where they don't trust their currency. Their currency drops 30% a year, and it's like a hot potato. People are saying, no, don't give me pesos. I want dollars, or I want something else. Except recently, when the government printed $12 trillion, the US government printed $12 trillion, we know that our dollar dropped by at least 20% right there. And if there is a plan to continue to print money, then there will be an inflationary spiral. And so your gold bet might not be a bad one, but gold, you can't use gold to go buy a Starbucks coffee, but you can use Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, there are only 21 million of them, and so it won't inflate and lose value over time. In fact, as more people do what you did, which is we're stuck in place. What do we do? Why don't we try a Bitcoin wallet? As more and more people start realizing that it's the easiest way to move money around, I think more people will, as more people use it, the value of the currency goes up. And if I needed to send you money right now, the easiest way for me to do it would be to send it right to your Bitcoin wallet with my smartphone. It's also transparent, and that means that every transaction is open to the world on the blockchain, and that means that the U.S. Marshal's Office was thinking that this was horrible because people were doing criminal activity with Bitcoin. Well, then it turned out that they were catching everybody because they saw it. It was all right there on the blockchain. And as more people attach their names to their accounts, we will have the most honest system. I mean, if you're a criminal, I recommend you use cash. I do not recommend you use any cryptocurrency because it'll be on the blockchain and it'll be proven. It'll be right there.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Tim, because there is the perspective. And early on, it was true. I mean, look at your purchase from Silk Road. The reality is, and maybe for libertarians like me, I don't like that aspect too much about blockchain and Bitcoin, that I send money to someone and they could look at my key and effectively see other transactions that I did. Now, it's incredibly transparent. That has its advantages. And the irony is, from a government perspective, I'm not so sure that it's not better. So that's the weird part about it. Let's talk a little bit. You're one of the world's largest individual holders of Bitcoin. I mean, honestly, it's well into hundreds of millions of dollars. But you do have a level of diversity in your crypto holdings. Is that to hedge against Bitcoin, or you think multiple may take off? I believe you're active in Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ripple, Tezos, and Ant or ANT or Aragon. Why?
Yeah, and Keep and Handshake and a number of others. We are very interested in this new technology. It's more than just a currency. One more thing with Bitcoin: the beauty of Bitcoin is it keeps perfect records. And so ultimately, I want to be in the venture business, raising money just in Bitcoin, investing it just in Bitcoin into startups, having them pay their employees and suppliers just in Bitcoin, and have the entire system built on a smart contract, which means the contract's built into software. So there's no discussion, there's no legal, there's no transfer agent, there's no accounting, no auditing. It's all done. It'll save us all a fortune in transaction costs and all of that extra, all the extra support services that we pay. So long term, there's no question in my mind. It's just better currency. Now, why do I invest in some of these other currencies? Well, I look and I say, well, each one of them has specific value. It's a little like, hey, I shop on Amazon. That Bitcoin's like Amazon. They're the center of all cryptocurrency. But then there are all these specialty stores that I also want to invest in. ANT or the Aragon. They actually are creating a new form of governance where you can have a trial jury online through a decentralized program. That's cool. That could be really interesting. Tezos is the first token that allows you to use proof of stake rather than proof of work. So all those hundreds of thousands of computers that are watching the Bitcoin blockchain use up energy. Tezos' system doesn't require a whole lot of energy to keep track of that blockchain. It also is one of the leaders, along with Ethereum, in smart contracts. Mm-hmm. And so long term, it might be that we build our smart contracts on Tezos. each of these has its own special technologies. And when there are really good, driven people focused in creating a new currency or a new way of operating in a decentralized way, I'm interested and I will fund it. And but I look at Bitcoin as, hey, that's like holding future cash. That's the future of currency. And so in general, I recommend, if people are interested in this, to start with Bitcoin. And then if they keep getting more interested, then if you're going to put money into any kind of, buy any other currencies, I would do a lot of research to figure out who are the people, how motivated are they, how driven. I've had the benefit of, since I did the Silk Road purchase, and since I invested in the first two ICO companies, I guess there was the DAO before the two ICO companies, but I invested in those two. I was the center, and I got so much deal flow from all of the people who are doing anything around cryptocurrency. And so I was able to start building judgment and see who was really driven, who was going to make a big impact on the world through their currency, and who was just doing it for, a quick hit. And so this is a really, it's an exciting time, because Bitcoin, along with just being a great currency, it also created a whole new industry where if you've got, there's so many other currencies out there that are doing something very similar, but it also created the blockchain. You can put more than currency on a blockchain. You can put data of any kind on a blockchain, and it will be permanent data. It will stay right there and be watched over. It also came up with a smart contract, and that is a contract that you can do, simple contract you can do with someone where you do a deal of some sort, and the money goes according to certain events that might happen. So if you and I made a bet on a game, the winner of the game would get the money from the bet automatically, and it would just be done in the smart contract, and there would be no, one of us wouldn't hire a lawyer and say, oh, we got to get through this, and it didn't.
No ambiguity.
Exactly the way the game was supposed to be played, or the ref wasn't fair, or whatever. There's none of that. It's just, here's the contract, it's done. So what that means to me is, if we've got a new currency, we got new smart contracts, we've got a new system for keeping perfect records, the entire banking, legal, accounting system is subject to transformation. We are in the process of having a new technology that is going to transform those industries. It's like, if you had a library of a bunch of books, and all of a sudden the internet has all those books on it, you've got, people have to make the transition from going to the library to check out a book to going online to either buy it, rent it, watch it, search for it, whatever. It's so we have a new form, a new technology that is bringing us to another level. We used to shop a lot at retail stores. Well, those retail stores had to go through real transformations. They've had to, because Amazon showed up and because the internet was there, so that we now can shop at retail stores from our computer. Well, the same thing's now happening where you can actually control your entire banking, your legal, your accounting system through your smartphone, and that's a major breakthrough. And I think that it's always, technology shows up and it gets a lot of hype at the beginning, and then it goes away for a while where people don't pay any attention to it, and then slowly but surely people start adopting it, The technology moves farther and farther forward so that the consumer can start participating, sending money, doing different things. Then the enterprise can start doing interesting new things with it. And then it grows way beyond what the hype was. And that happens with all the big industries. When the internet came, there was a big hype monster around 1999, and then it came crashing down. And then there was a lull for a while, and then it moved way past the peak in 1999. Same things happened with Bitcoin. We had 2017, there was a hype monster. It kind of came back down slowly but surely. All these businesses, all of these industries are improving because of Bitcoin, and it's growing. With Bitcoin, with dollars, what people don't always see is that they're paying an extra 2.5% to 4% every time they swipe their credit card, and that money goes to the bank. A little bit to the credit card company, but mostly to the bank. Well, there's not a bank in Bitcoin. So once every retailer recognizes that with OpenNode, it's a company we backed, they can bring OpenNode on and accept Bitcoin, then they don't have to pay that 2.5% to 4% to the bank anymore. And the retailer can pass that savings on to you as a customer or keep it themselves. And it's also really interesting that while women control 80% of retail spending, roughly, only one in about 14, at the beginning of this year, only about 1 in about 14 Bitcoin wallets was created by a woman. And now it's gotten down to about 1 in 10. And I think what's happening is all of that retail spending is going to move toward using Bitcoin instead of using the banks. And I think they're recognizing that they're all better off by doing that.
I mean, I think a big adapter is when institutions, corporations, and perhaps governments inevitably get involved. So just off the top of my head, in my backyard in Greenwich, you have Paul Tudor Jones being much more of an advocate as kind of the conservative hedge fund community in the Northeast. You have Fidelity doing custodial services. You have PayPal making a huge announcement. One of our live viewers reminded me that Chipotle now has like a Bitcoin crypto only location. And you have Michael Saylor, the CEO at MicroStrategies, a public company, basically saying he's replaced and has replaced 450 million of cash with Bitcoin holding as part of his corporate governance, that simply it's a better long-term strategy. This will now likely exponentially grow Bitcoin. You've been on record, I think this was pre-COVID, of saying that you believe that Bitcoin now at about 10,000 plus could go up to 250 even by 2022 or 23. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, if anything, COVID sort of shrunk the time to get there. But yeah, because that represents about using Bitcoin for about 5% of all economic transactions. And I think we're going to get there. It certainly seems that way. Imagine if you are a corporate treasurer and you are all in dollars and the government prints $14 trillion. Your dollars just dropped 20% in value overnight.
Absolutely.
In an incredibly short time. So some portion of your cash should be in Bitcoin. It should be a way of you're a fiduciary, you're responsible for that cash, for that corporate cash. You should be making sure that you are covered in the case where a government prints all that money. And so at the very least, some portion, 5%, 10% of the cash should be in Bitcoin if you're going to be a decent fiduciary.
I mean, Tim, I'll put it this way.
In some cases, people are saying, wait, this is the future of currency. Let's take all our cash and put it in there. One public company did that and it went up about 4x.
I had one attorney, and I'm not saying I'm a fan of this, but tell me, and this could be a little scary to some families, that that's so extreme what you're saying, that from a corporate side or a trustee of a trust for a wealthy family, that it is negligence to potentially have it all specifically in, it's hard for me to say this, but dollars. They're looking for opportunities to maybe lawsuits against that. Now, that lends itself perfectly to my next two questions, which come from one of my viewers today. And it says, Tim, besides a buy and hold strategy, what trading strategies do you suggest to help moderate the volatility? And the volatility is still going to be a concern as a cash replacement.
Yeah, so I look at it this way. One Bitcoin is always going to be worth one Bitcoin. But all these other currencies are going to be very volatile as they slowly disappear from view. It's just a matter of, I mean, as we move from our existing system of geographic tribal money to global open money, slowly but surely, naturally, all that tribal money is going to get to be worth less and less and less as a percentage of a Bitcoin. And so I think we've got a very interesting time here where they're going to be volatile based on, the shiny object of the media. The media says one good thing about Bitcoin, and then it goes up, and then all the currencies go down against it. And then they say something bad about a dollar, all the currencies go down against it. They say something good about a dollar, it shoots back up. It's going to bounce around on its way down. There are some groups that are, they are actually really just making great liquidity in the market for Bitcoin. But they buy and sell and buy and sell. I look and I say, well, long term, this is going to be the future of money, and why not own as much of it as you can?
It may be a little off topic, but what do you think about developments in Wyoming relative to certain structures, Bitcoin or crypto banks, what Kraken is doing? I look at that as only being a positive. It's becoming more mainstream, and it's inevitable that banks and others are going to be involved with this from a custodial and another perspective.
Sure. I mean, you're going to, Kraken, and then there's another new bank coming in Wyoming. The two,
Arca, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. They're going to make it so that it'll be very easy. If you have a bank account there, you can move your money from dollars to Bitcoin in a very simple way. It's not too hard to move it anyway. With you just go to get a Coinbase account and buy some Bitcoin. But I think it is the idea of having it all custody, linking your bank to your Bitcoin in some way is probably a very positive bridge from the fiat tribal world to the Bitcoin global world. So those banks, and I like that Wyoming's done such a nice job of creating light touch regulations that encourage more innovation in currencies. So I think that's really quite exciting.
They've done an amazing job. Another question that came in, I think it's a great one. Assuming central banks create their own digital currency, is that a good or a bad thing for Bitcoin's value? Once something is digital, Tim, I can't imagine it going back to being analog. So like the cat's out of the bag, it seems inevitable that governments are going to do whatever, the dollar, the British pound, in their version of crypto. And is that a little bit of a threat to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Aurora coin was created by Iceland. And I was all excited about it. I thought, oh, great, finally, a government's going to do this same kind of thing and create a currency. And then they made it only available in Icelandic money. And I thought, oh, that is ridiculous. Bitcoin is global. You're going to only trade in Iceland? It makes no sense. And so same thing's happening. China's going to try to create their own currency. It's still the renminbi. It's still subject to political whims of their leaders.
And here's the big one, Tim. They could always make more of it. It's not limited like Bitcoin to 21 million. That's right. Like, it's the same thing as printed money, other than via blockchain, they could track you more on your transactions.
And they can and they can devalue it at the brush of a pen. They can just say, oh, we're just going to print twice as many. All of a sudden, your currency, your renminbi crypto is worth half. And it's just because some central government decided to do it. And that's why people are distinguishing between decentralized currencies like Bitcoin, and centralized currencies that are tied to governments. Now, I think the smart governments are going to, like Japan did, they're going to make Bitcoin a national currency. And that way they can start moving toward allowing businesses to operate completely in Bitcoin and to tax people completely in Bitcoin. And that, I think, turns out to be a way for the government to keep going, but get into the future, because the ones that are getting control, becoming control freaks, and trying to trap people in their currency are really missing the whole point. The whole point is there is now a decentralized, open, global currency. It is for everyone, and everyone can use it. And actually, there are several. It's not just Bitcoin, but there are others that are also decentralized. Some are centralized, so you got to keep an eye on that.
I mean, is there some risk?
The issue that the U.S. government had with Facebook is that Libra was going to be centralized, and that the U.S. government is centralized. Those are centralized currencies, and so, I think our Fed has a new role. Our Fed should be starting to think, how do we incorporate a Bitcoin into our economic system? And the IRS needs to figure out, instead of just the idea of taxing Bitcoin as an asset, it slows,
which they do now.
Right. Yeah. It slows down the movement.
For sure.
They should be thinking in terms of either you tax a transaction or you tax, like 0.0001% of a transaction, or you think in terms of just paralleling the existing tax system and allowing businesses to run completely in Bitcoin, and then just tax them in Bitcoin, so that you aren't taking, like, if I do that today, I have to triple my accounting costs. I have to go back and forth from fiat to Bitcoin to fiat to Bitcoin to fiat to Bitcoin. I think the best governments are going to make sure that people can operate an entire business in Bitcoin. And they are going to be the big beneficiaries of this huge growth in economic value. I mean, it's going to be more than what happened when the internet came in. When the internet showed up, our government, the US government, was thinking of how they were going to tax it and regulate it and all that. And they stayed hands off, and it became enormous and a great success for the US government. I think people should look at Bitcoin the same way. This is going to be enormous in industries that are even bigger than the ones that were affected by the internet. The internet affected communications and information and gaming and entertainment, media. Bitcoin is going to affect banking, commerce, finance, insurance, real estate, government. These are huge industries. So the government who gets it right and attracts all those Bitcoin entrepreneurs and all that Bitcoin money are going to be huge beneficiaries, and those that go back to tribalism and do what you talked about, which was to create their own coin tied to their own dollar or their own peso or their own naira. They're going to be lost. They're going to lose 10 years, 20 years of economic progress.
Or worse, suppose you get developed countries that are afraid of this, they collude, and they basically say at the same time, let's make Bitcoin illegal, and really we're going to run with our own digital currency. But not every country would do that. And the ones that are more open would attract probably wealthy, bright, and entrepreneurs that may leave the countries that ban it. I mean, that may get ugly. I don't think that's going to happen.
It's already
a concern.
It's already happened where China said Bitcoin was illegal and Japan made Bitcoin a national currency. There was a huge brain drain out of China and into Japan and other countries that were more open, and huge economic value left China because of that. I know Binance left.
Yes.
And so when governments do that at their own peril, governments really need to realize they are in competition for us. Look, I don't even know where you are. You don't know where I am. We could be anywhere, and we can be doing business and doing all sorts of things and trading back and forth. And so governments really have to realize that they want to attract people to their government, whether it's even like Estonia, you can have governance outside. And you mentioned you're a libertarian. It's interesting. I'm close in that way. I look and I say the governance is like all industries. The governments of the world have to compete for their customers, for their constituents.
Absolutely.
And if you're China and you close something down and you lose brains and money as a result of it, you've made a huge mistake. You need to start thinking, how do I attract people to my government? I mean, California is doing it very wrong. They're
look at
saying,
the taxes.
how we're going to raise taxes. We provide horrible service, and we're going to try to trap you into our country, into our state. And people don't respond well to that. They're trying to say, oh, there's an exit tax or a this or that. They're trying to trap people so that they don't leave. But good people are going to leave. They're just going to go.
They've been leaving to Wyoming, to Nevada, to Texas, even Florida.
Sure.
Some of the tax advantages of Puerto Rico, if you still want to be a U.S. citizen. What other countries besides Japan, and I was going to bring up Estonia, do you see as being progressive on cryptocurrency? And has the U.S. been about in the middle or a little more positive or negative?
U.S. has been in the middle, but they should be mostly positive toward crypto because they were huge beneficiaries of the internet, and they want to be beneficiaries of this new industry that's coming. And so they're middle of the road, and they're losing out to Malta, Gibraltar, but also countries like Switzerland, who really, they had the tiger by the tail and then they lost it because they overregulated. But then they realized that they've overregulated and they are deregulating, and people are coming back in. The UK is doing everything they can to bring more. They want to be the finance capital of the world again, and they are doing what they can to deregulate there and to attract.
Oh, that's Singapore.
Singapore, yeah, they got heavy-handed and they lost Binance. Binance went to Singapore first, but Singapore generally has incredibly bright people in government, and they are doing a lot of really interesting, innovative things in government. They have not been, since they have a very strong, I guess you could call it a lobby from the banks in Singapore. I think
Yes.
that they're having trouble being the great innovator or the most progressive that where they would have been if they hadn't had this problem that a big portion of their money comes from the three banks in Singapore.
Not enough time to go into detail and a history of custody, of cold storage, of hard wallet, of multi-sig. We'll save that for a bit of a different time. And yeah, that could get a little complex. So that's not necessarily an easy subject. But I've had wealthy families tell me they're interested, maybe less as a store of value, more as an investment speculation, but for some of the things that I just noted. But now with Fidelity getting active in custody, that may make them feel more comfortable. But what other ways could people be active, whether as a future, through hedge funds? How could they get exposure to cryptocurrencies without technically what they may perceive to be the complexity of ownership and storage?
Well, I'll tell you, I did a lot of research. I have a lot of Bitcoin, so I did a lot of research on custody, Fidelity is a name that breeds confidence, but Coinbase is doing the best job. And there are a couple of others that are doing an excellent job too. I probably would think in terms of working with Coinbase to buy and custody your Bitcoin.
Now, that's if you're doing tremendously large amounts that you're doing. And I could probably make the argument to be diversified into multiple custodians. But a little bit of someone of my persuasion may potentially say, yeah, if they get a letter from the government, they're going to freeze my account. So that lends itself to hard wallet, keys, in your head, seed phrases. But the risk with that, besides forgetting it or forgetting where you keep it or getting kidnapped and tortured, there is no one perfect answer. For someone who owns a lot, perhaps diversity in various strategies is going to be best. But could you get exposure through futures or hedge funds?
Yeah. I think you can get exposure in lots of different ways. I always feel that it's better to own it directly, whatever it is. I don't even buy ETFs for that reason, because you don't actually own it; you own a bet on it. I would rather own the stock, the underlying stock, own the currency. Own it directly. But that's just me. I know a lot of people have done very well with futures and options and all sorts of other things, and they manage those very well. And I realize that there is some great value there and great ways of hedging various things. But I think I would recommend owning it. And then I'd recommend I would go get a wallet, and I would send somebody some money. I would go buy something. And all of a sudden you'll realize how incredibly easy and how valuable this is going to be for the future of the world. And I think you'll get on board just the way Angelo and I have. Now, there were a couple of other questions. One, can you use the blockchain in secure voting in elections? No question. I have no idea why we're still using paper ballots. I have no idea why we have to go to voting booths, why we use the US mail. It makes absolutely no sense. So Estonia has done an outstanding job of creating digital voting, and I don't think they even use the blockchain in their digital voting. And nobody's cheating there. I mean, they've got identity nailed. So why can't we? It makes no sense. The other question was, how can we ascertain the veracity and accuracy of the information we upload onto the blockchain from the get-go jump? Well, you can't, Andrea. Sorry. The veracity of data is just as good. I mean, the data that gets put on the blockchain is only going to be as good as the data that's put on the blockchain. But there are a lot of companies using blockchain for like Hermes purses, for the art, for the veracity of making sure that we know that that is the real art, that is the real Hermes, and those companies will rise to the top, and they'll determine whether it's true.
Given that you have a significant amount of your net worth, you're definitely a believer, and it's worked out very well for you in the last 6 years. There are some risks that people bring up besides some of the obvious keys stolen, et cetera, stuff like that. There are some that say that if you control 51% of the computation power, that you could take control of the blockchain. But now that it's gotten so big, getting 51% control, I think, would be impossible. Could government cryptography potentially crack it, and inevitably quantum computing? But I've been hearing about that for 12, 13 years now. Nonetheless, I think it's fair to bring them up. What would be some of your counter arguments to that?
Well, for quantum computing, we've actually backed 3 quantum computing companies, so I'm very familiar with how those work and how it operates. The first uses of quantum computing would clearly be, within the crypto world, would be in mining, and so the first thing you do would be mine, and that would allow you to get more Bitcoin faster than all the other computers out there. Well, once you have quantum computing mining, then the hacker comes in and he's too late, because the miner also verifies the blockchain. So that risk, I think they're just not technical when they come up with that risk. They don't understand the technology if they talk about that risk. The other risk, the 51% was more one when Bitmain had a big part of the mining, because then they could verify their own blockchain if they spun it out, but they would lose all the value of all the Bitcoin that they had if they did that. Confidence in Bitcoin would go to zero if that were the case. So they have no incentive. There's no incentive for them to mess with the system, even if they got past 50%, but they won't, because new technologies come along. Let's say they have 51% of the Ant miners going at it right now. Well, Ant comes up with another miner that's 4 times as powerful. Then Bitmain has to buy all new equipment to keep up. It's very much a commodity business, and it's a race to the bottom, and there are so many computers out there mining Bitcoin that there are so many things that make it so that's the likelihood is very close to none.
Given the time concerns, my final question. Bitcoin is by far the leader now. That's no guarantee it will remain that way. Back in the 70s, there was like IBM, Commodore, and Apple. One of them obviously is not with us anymore in Commodore. You don't really know who the winner is going to be in 10, 15, 20 years, or do you? Do you hedge your bets with other currencies? And what could be devastating to Bitcoin? Could better blockchain and technologies evolve, or something else rises to the top?
Sure, that stuff always happens. I've seen it in so many different ways and different operations, but I think you're talking about something that might happen 40 years from now, when these. It's true there were sort of 3 computer companies at the beginning, or many computer companies at the beginning, and then a few rose to the top, and then those rose to the top. Well, Amazon kind of rose to the top of the e-commerce world, but there were all these other e-commerce companies out there. Bitcoin has risen to the top. They were first, and they are the largest. In fact, I think the market cap of Bitcoin is bigger than the market cap of all the other currencies
Combined,
so,
yes.
So I think that you are looking at in an industry that is on the rise, but there is a clear winner, the way Amazon's a clear winner. And then there are going to be all of these specialized tokens out there that some of which will rise up and become big. And then, there might be something that challenges Bitcoin's hegemony 20 years from now. I don't think that happens very quickly because there's too much momentum or inertia built around Bitcoin. Too many engineers working on the Bitcoin ecosystem that will grow it. It would be like starting a computer company today. You'd really have to have something quite extraordinary to unseat Apple and then the PC.
And Tim, for those that have an interest in learning more about how to be an active investor in the community, you're active, of course, it has your name on it, in Draper, Gorin, and Home. Is that an opportunity, a website where people could go to learn more? And if they're qualified, potentially reach out as an investor?
Sure. I mean, the way to reach me is tim@draper.vc. And I do see all my emails. But more interested if you have investment that you want to make or a startup that you want to see or some token, or you have some technical question about Bitcoin and that I might be able to answer, or I would learn from the question, I'd be happy to respond to all of those. Draper Associates is my main focus of investing. Draper Gorin Home is one of my network partners, and that one is focused exclusively on crypto and blockchain investments. So anyway, that's how you reach me, tim@draper.vc, and I encourage you to go ahead and connect with me.
That's wonderful, Tim, and thank you for providing your contact info. I'm sure our live audience and those that will see the recording will enjoy it. In my brief close, I'll try to make it quick. I'm Angelo Robles. I'm the host of the Angelo Robles Podcast and founder and CEO at Family Office Association. It was great to have Tim on today. I'm incredibly interested in blockchain, Bitcoin, crypto, doing a significant white paper on it, have had great guests the last couple of weeks on it, and many more to follow. I find it very intriguing, and Tim is truly one of the great thought leaders and one of the greatest owners of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. He's putting his mouth where his money is. We are, meaning Family Office Association, a global membership organization dedicated to families and their family offices, providing significant resources and content for our members. Used to be physical events, and one day they will come back, and people like Tim and Peter Thiel and Ray Dalio have spoken. We've been very honored. But right now, it ain't so bad in the digital world. We're doing hundreds of these every year. Usually much deeper dives than at physical events. There's more intellectual firepower and even opportunity to connect with your peers via the chat feature. So there's so much going on, and we become incredibly active in the world of wealth preservation and crypto. So some of the resources that we provide our members are going to be hard to obtain elsewhere. Some of our Rolodex are connectivity and sometimes special opportunities. On that note, you could reach me either through the website, familyofficeassociation.com. I'm Angelo, email, that's angelo@familyofficeassociation.com, and very active on social media. Subscribe to us on YouTube or simply Family Office, so Family Office channel on YouTube. Tim, thank you so much. It's been a great time. I look forward to the next time. Thank you.
Terrific.